Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another live stream. Something slightly different for you this evening. Normally, you're used to my community guest Q&As on a Tuesday, but a little bit of a bonus one here for you this evening. I put out a tweet a couple of days ago, and I've had lots of responses on team screenshots. So I thought we'll put it all in a video, and I will run through them, and have a bit of a talking point about some of the players in there. Yeah, we'll get straight into it. A couple of housekeeping things, but it won't be a lot of the usual long intro that we normally get on some of the streams. It will just be straight into that, and we can have a chat about some of those key things in there. If you guys don't follow me already on Twitter and are new to subscribing on YouTube, had a lot of new subscribers. That's really great to see, so thanks a lot. If you could go and check me out on Twitter as well, that would be really appreciated. Just a couple of stream sponsors that you've seen down at the bottom there. First, FPL merch. If you guys need prizes for mini leagues or anything like that season, go and check them out. A great guy over there. And Fantasy Football Hub, a lot of good stats and tools, as well as articles from myself and others over on there. This is the last week you can get 25% off with them, so just use the code in the description in order to get 25% off. Just one more thing, a little something for you all there. The FPL Tips YouTube League is filling up fast. We have a lot of entrants in there now, which is really great to see. As I said, and as I'll show you now, the league is only available for you guys on YouTube. It's not available on Twitter to all my followers over there. It's literally just for you guys on YouTube. So as you can see on the screen, we've got monthly prizes for you all, bi-monthly prizes, and then a big overall prize for the overall winner, which will include prizes from both my stream sponsors as well as some other little stuff in there. The code is on there, and this is the only place that you're going to be able to find this code. It's not going to be anywhere else. It's not even in the description. So if you guys want to join the league, make sure you go and add that in there, and make sure you join up as the season gets going. But without further ado, thank you all for joining this Saturday evening stream. If you're watching it back again, thank you. If you could drop a like and a subscribe, it'd be really appreciated. We've smashed that 500 subscription target. If we could try and hit 20 likes on this video again, it really would be appreciated, guys. So thanks a lot. But yeah, that's about all that I had today. Just leave the code up there for you if you need it for one more second, but we'll get straight into any of the drafts that we've got. So the first one that we're going to look at is this one from Nuclear Atoms, who is in the chat there this evening. So something that we noticed straight away, and it's a sort of a partnership that we might see throughout, is this sort of Aubameyang Salah duo. I think we'll just talk about it earlier on rather than going into it. I think it is a good duo for sort of the opening game weeks. It's interesting that people are favouring Salah over Mane, when actually Mane's pre-season form is much stronger than that of Salah, and this form at the end of last season was probably more favourable towards Mane. But people seem to be going with Salah, seeing that they've been given the same price. I do think it's worthwhile starting with them, and then once we know which one of them is probably the better option, we can have a look at sort of our Man City and Manchester United assets come game week 3, game week 2, when they start to get their fixtures back. But I do think it's a strong way to go in game week 1. Something that does stand out for me is that there are no Manchester United or Manchester City assets in this team. Looking forward, I personally do have one Manchester United player starting on the bench, as well as a couple of Burnley players, because I don't want to be making sure that I've got transfers that I know I have to use on something early on, and I want to be able to, if there's a hot player who doesn't play for Manchester United or City, I've already got players from that team, and I can start jumping on the other hot prospects early on in the season. So that would be potentially something that I would look at. Seeing as you've got sort of so much strength on your bench, it could be an opportunity that you have one of those starters already in your starting squad. One way that I'd probably look at it in this one is not going with Justin in defence. So Leicester have signed a new left back and Ricardo Pereira at right back, meaning Justin is very short term. He has a very short term place in that Leicester lineup. So someone like Charlie Taylor of Burnley could sit on your bench game week 1. You could start for Niall Gray at Wolves. So that would be a sort of a good way that I think you could have that sort of depth. I think those Burnley defenders are really well priced this season. Elsewhere in the team, you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, a great pick. McCarthy, also a really nice pick. Not much to say on those. St. Maximin, I do really like. Just make sure he's a bit much to be relying on him every single week, so try and use a rotation option. And he rotates really well with Crystal Palace specifically. So you have got Mitchell there on the bench if you need him and if he does keep his place, although Patrick Van Aanholt is back in training. Souček is one to watch out for. He has been put into quarantine, but just worth looking out for him. And I'm sure we'll talk about the forward line a lot going forward. Werner, Jimenez, Ings is quite an expensive front line. I definitely think that you could play the price point game a bit better there and go with Werner, one of Ings and Jimenez, and drop down one of them to a 6.5 mil striker, because I think there will be one of those forwards who does well at the start of the season, and just having that easy to jump across rather than having to make that big downgrade is probably the way I'd go. But overall, it is a strong team, a strong bench as well there, but just seems potentially maybe slightly short focus for that game week 1 fixture specifically. So we'll go back up to the top and we will just have a look. So this is Quarry in the chat. Again, we'll have a look at your team. So this is something slightly different here, that we've got 2 Manchester United assets sitting on the bench. And so as a result, we've got some of those maybe cheaper players that Quarry won't want to play every week, like Ferguson, in that starting lineup. But I would say that having those 2 Manchester United assets on the bench, looking at your starting lineup, it's only Ferguson that really is a non-starter that you're putting into your starting lineup, and he does have a good opening fixture, although you do have your Palace defender against your 2 Southampton players there. Interesting that there is no Salah in this lineup. Something that we haven't seen very much is the lack of Salah or Mane and Aubameyang in the team. It does allow for a much more balanced team to only have one of those 12 mil options. So your midfield and your attack would be a bigger unit, but you just don't know what Salah's going to offer that you potentially could really risk losing out on because of his ownership. The only worry looking at your team is your captaincy options. So I don't fancy Martial and Greenwood so much as captaincy options. So looking at your team, it's probably only Aubameyang that you're going to be able to rely on in the sort of captaincy bracket, which is a bit of a worry given those fixtures after about game week 2, game week 3 are not the best. So potentially looking at Son or Martial for captaincy, but it's just thinking about, okay, you've got Aubameyang for the first couple of weeks, you can captain him, but just also thinking, okay, what else can I do with my team? So just, I think it's strong, and I really like the balance that you get without having him, although I just worry in terms of the captaincy aspect of it. If we look in goal and defence, I really like the defence. It does look really strong. I would personally prefer to have Ramsdale in there, and I'd prefer to have McCarthy in there and Taylor in defence over Ramsdale and Walker-Peters. It does just save $500,000, and I really like that Burnley defence. We do have the sort of future transfers going forward, so this will look at bringing in Aguero, which is a very big differential pick, as well as Willian. I think there are better options than Willian, but I do really like the Aguero as a pick. But you do just have a lot of players that I wonder if you're not going to have that captaincy option, which could struggle early on, because you don't know whether Aguero is going to play every single game. I like it a lot, and I think it's good to have a plan going forward, but that 8 mil on Willian is probably not the way that I'll be spending my money. I definitely think there's better options than that 8 million of Willian, whether it is someone like Pulisic at 8.5. So if you were to do that Ramsdale, Walker-Peters to McCarthy and Taylor, that would give you an extra $500,000 to do Willian to Pulisic when he becomes fit, or just going in with someone like Dele Alli early on as well. So I think there's a good basis to this team, but there are better picks for someone like Willian going forward. So if we start back up at the top, now we've had a look at them there. So Owen on Twitter has sent in his team. So again, we see quite a similar theme of Salah and Aubameyang, where with your sort of Greenwood, Taylor sat on the bench in order to sort of come in a few weeks' time when the blank fixtures come back and we have those Man U and Burnley assets. If you want to send in your team while you're watching now, thanks, Quarry. I worry with having Martinez in your team, this backup the backup goalkeeper for Arsenal, sorry. We don't know completely if he's going to be first choice, so I would rather just go for a 4.0 and save it and play McCarthy every week. Ferguson also looks injured and we don't quite know his place in the team yet, so I would prefer someone like Mitchell, although the 4.0 options this season are very, very limited. So if we look at the starting lineup, I think you've played the sort of pricing quite well. You can jump on to pretty much any player that hits strong form. I do like this a lot, and the players on the bench to come in are also going to really help strengthen it. So Mitrovic is an interesting one. This is a player who's sort of toying with a lot of people's teams. I do like him as a pick, but I think there's probably better picks looking at fixtures and things like that. I do quite like Che Adams at that price as well. So it's an interesting one for Mitrovic. That Arsenal at home fixture in Game Week 1 is not ideal because they have been much stronger defensively. But it is a gamble, and we know that one of those 6.0 defenders, 6.0 attackers will hit the ground running. So it's just a best at how we can try and sort of guess in a way about who it's going to be. Mitrovic isn't a bad shout. He's definitely worse picks than him, but I'm going Che Adams over him. Jimenez and Ings is an interesting duo. So I definitely I like the combination, although I'm not sure that both of them offer great value this season. I do have a sort of thing coming out on Twitter over the next couple of days which looks at the pair of them. I personally prefer Ings slightly over the two. So maybe you could do something with Jimenez to maybe a Chelsea asset. So you could have a look at the likes of Pulisic when he comes back fit. I really would like if we had Pulisic in for Jimenez there, I really would like that as a team, and I think your midfield five as well as what you've got off the bench would be really, really strong. So that potentially is something to look at as well. Davies in defence is nice, although a straight swap for Eric Dyer at the same price I prefer because of his bonus point potential, because of how much more time he'll spend on the ball making passes to what we get with Davies. But the basis of this team is really, really strong, and I think this team definitely should have a strong start to the season. So we'll go on to FPL Wilson next. Yeah, guys in the chat, if you want to send it over on the tweet for the initial live stream, which went up about 2 days ago or yesterday, and put it on there, then I can try and get to it. I won't be able to get to everyone, but I'll do my best. So another team that we've got here, I won't be going through the same picks. So we've got the Salahs, we've got the Aubameyangs. An interesting talking point in this one is definitely going to be that Bruno Fernandes on the bench and Calvert-Lewin. Fernandes is very much a luxury player for me, in my opinion. If you can afford him, great, which this team looks like it can. It's a great pick, and I think he will return points. But I just like the look of Greenwood and elsewhere for the price that he can offer and the value that those cheaper options can offer. Calvert-Lewin is an interesting one. He scored again today in pre-season. I actually think at 7 million, it's worth investing that extra million over those 6 million. So that we saw on previous teams, someone like Mitrovic, if you could stretch that into the Calvert-Lewins of this world, I definitely think that's a good way to be going about it. Everton's fixtures are fairly good opening start of the season. Definitely is an option that I like. Again, I can see why people would go for someone like Mitrovic over him just to save that million, especially given the form at the end of last season. But I do think that there's going to be reward for investing that extra $500,000 on him if that's something that you can do. If we just have a look at the Everton fixtures briefly, they've got West Brom, Crystal Palace and Brighton all in their first four after that Tottenham away game. So definitely is a fixture that I'm liking, a group of fixtures that I'm liking, and an asset that I'm liking as well, and favourably priced at 7 million. So we do have a change of goalkeeper in this one in Meslier of Leeds, which is an interesting one, especially having played Liverpool in game week 1. I know for a goalkeeper we need to look long term. You don't want to be making game week transfers for goalkeepers, but their fixtures at early part of the season, probably before you're going to play your wild card, are really not good enough, and I think you can do better than having Meslier in your team. I do like McCarthy and I like Ryan at 4.5, as well as the new, the West Brom goalkeeper. Those would be the 4.5 goalkeepers that I would be going for at the moment. So if we just keep going down and have a look at some of the other ones, again, a fairly similar team from Matthew here, nothing too much to talk about. I actually really do like Ayew as a 4.5 million pick. Sorry, a 6 million pick. He was cheap last year. He's got a price rise this year. It is one that I like, and he actually looks really sort of the focal point of that Crystal Palace attack at the moment. And I actually think he's much more proven than the likes of Che Adams and Mitrovic in that 6 million price bracket. So there are definitely reasons that you'd want to pick someone like Ayew up and look at him over those others. It's just those fixtures are not as great to start with United and Chelsea, Southampton, Everton as their first four. It's not ideal for him. So the fixtures for Mitrovic and the others are better. So move on to FPL TT. A big Newcastle fan, surprised not to see St Maximin in his side here, but a very strong side just off the back of it. A differential pick that we've got here is that double Liverpool defence. So it's something that we've spoken about a lot, and it's something that's been a big talking point, especially at people's initial drafts. A lot of them had that Trent and Robertson double up, including my own. But now it's not something that's quite there because of their sort of pre-season form, and looking at the end of last season, they were quite poor defensively. In Liverpool terms, they were still good, but it wasn't quite worth investing in their assets at the price they were. I personally don't think, while their fixtures aren't amazing, it's worth going, but it is something that I will definitely be having a look at. I do like it, but I just don't think it's for game week 1 for me. Doherty is an interesting one. I liked him at Wolves a lot, but 6 million for a Spurs defender when they kept about 7 clean sheets last season. It's not a player that I definitely will be going for. I think there's better assets in there that you can get for cheaper. Like if you went for Taylor in defence for 4.5, you'd save 1.5 million that you could upgrade your Bissouma to someone like a St Maximin, for example, and that would sort of just add the strength and the depth that we need. An interesting talking point is this strength and depth that we could potentially need with COVID. We may not know if players are not going to play a game week up until about the team news comes out because they've had a positive test on the day of it, or they've had a test that's come up high or something like that on the day. So it is worth having a player at least on your bench who is going to play and has that potential of returning points. Whether that is a 4.5 defender, it is worth having more strength and depth now than it has been before. Sorry, I didn't mean to skip past it. I'll go back to this one now because there are actually some very differential picks in here. I would just straight away watch out for having Saliba in that Arsenal lineup. We don't know that Arsenal defence very much at the moment. We don't know what we're going to get from them. So having him in your team is a big risk because we're unlikely to know that lineup, what it's going to be. Someone like, who else could we have at a sort of 4.5? You could have a look at your Brighton defence, another Southampton defender and go Ryan in goal, or just going to a 4.5 and upgrading maybe Sander Berge to someone like you've got St Maximin, Sander Berge up to someone like Armstrong or someone like that, or going for another 6 million forward to strengthen there. I don't think it's worth having sort of 5 defenders all priced at 4.5 and above. As well as I'd probably save the 1 million on Saiss and downgrade him to Vinagre. So sort of the summary of that was I'd go Saliba and Saiss down to Vinagre and a 4.0 of one of the Crystal Palace guys. I downgrade Sander Berge to a 4.5 million, for example, Stevens or Romeu, and I'd upgrade Davies to probably a 6 million forward. Just add that strength and depth, probably more than you would have just by those extra 500,000 throughout the team. So we'll just skip through a few here, try and find a few differentials that are popping up in teams because we do start to see a bit of a template forming. So if we look here, this is a very, very different team, and there are definitely things that are worth talking about. So first of all is Tierney in defence. I really like Tierney for their opening sort of few fixtures. So we know that they've got Fulham in game week 1, and I really like that as a fixture for them. Fulham are particularly strong at home, and I have some stats coming out on Twitter about that. But they are particularly strong at home and not so good away. game week 2 they have West Ham at home, and game week 4 they have Sheffield United at home. So 3 of the first 4 are really good for Arsenal and Tierney. And if they're going to play a back 3/back 5, Tierney pushing up on that wing back role could be something that's really interesting, and could be a sort of a replication of that sort of game week 38 points that we saw from him last season, where he got really far forward and was assisting and scoring with Aubameyang in that game. So I do like him as an early pick, but coming into sort of game week 5, where they then play Man City, Leicester, Man United in 3 games, you're going to need to have an option of where he's going to be, because you're not going to be wanting to start him in those games. Moutinho in at 5.5 is an interesting pick. It's not one that I would necessarily go to, because I definitely think there's better picks than we've got at that price. Your St. Maximans and your Armstrong specifically are better at that price. He's a bit of a differential. I can see why he's gone there. He's on set pieces and things like that. But I just think there's definitely better options at that price than we can see within Moutinho. And the other big differentials we've got in here is Harry Kane. We've seen a couple of Sons and a Dele Alli here in the sort of first drafts we looked at. But if we look at Kane, he's definitely the big focal point of that Spurs attack now. We have Højbjerg coming into that Spurs team and playing in that sort of much defensive role, and he is the leader in midfield that they haven't had. And it's what's happened is we've had to have Kane coming and dropping deep in a lot of games, which has been infuriating for a lot of us managers. But having Højbjerg in the team could allow Kane to be the attacker that we all want him to be, to get forward into the box, to be up there the whole time, rather than dropping deep and letting Son and Ali do it. Which has actually been a hindrance to Son, because we've seen him pushed out wide a lot more. So I really like Kane as a pick. And if I was going to be going on a Spurs asset, which I currently am, it would be Kane or Dele Alli over the Son, because of Kane being through the middle and up front so much more. We don't see Son being pushed into the middle quite as much anymore. So the final one we've got on here is Phil Foden on the bench. Another big differential in this team. And I do like Phil Foden as a pick, although we just don't quite know how many minutes he's going to get. They have signed a new winger. So if Aguero's fit, that now means that Sterling, Mahrez, Foden and Torres all on the wing are going to be looking for places. Now, Foden can play in the sort of midfield spot, so we could see De Bruyne and Foden in the midfield. But that's not exactly where we want him to be. We want to be him as far forward as we saw during some games last season. I just worry that his minutes are not going to be there quite as much as people expect. He's not going to be starting every game. I think it's safe to say that. So I just think to start the season, just to ease it in, it's too much of a risk for me to be going with someone like Foden in my team. So there are a few others, just sort of a bit of a breather for me all here. If you guys don't already, here is the link to the mini league that is there at the moment. If you guys don't have it up at the moment, then go for it. Make sure you join that. The prizes are all there. If you guys don't know already, this is not available anywhere else, only for you guys. It's specific for you. And the prizes, I don't have another prize mini league. It's only to help to say thank you for all your support on YouTube, hitting that 500 subscriber mark, the likes that we're getting. If you're watching now, or if you're watching a replay and you've got this far, if you could go and drop a like on this video and a comment as well. Let me know if you've agreed with my decisions or disagreed with them. That would be really great if you could just let me know your thoughts. But yeah, that's the code there. Hit a like, subscribe on the video, and drop a comment on what you've thought what you disagree with or what you agree with what I've said so far. So we will get back into it. We have a team here from Chris. A couple of differentials that we'll pick out here at the moment. Just from a Chelsea fan perspective, we've got Ziyech in your team there. Just watch out whether he's going to be fit for game week 1. He hasn't been back in training yet from what we know. We don't know if he's going to be fit come game week 1, so I would just be wary of him at the moment. And yeah, be looking at Havertz depending on what price he comes in at. Maitland-Niles. So again, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with him. We have heard that Bellerin could be off to Barcelona, which would make Maitland-Niles at 5 million a really interesting pick, which is probably why he's in this team. Just keep an eye out on the transfers there. I personally, again, as I've said, not a fan of Ramsdale at 5 million. I just think, if unless you're wildcarding late, if you know you're going to wildcard come game week 16, then I think Ramsdale fine. You will get the points later on that you may miss out early on from someone like McCarthy. The only other thing that I worry here is the lack of depth that you've got on your bench, and that you've got Gordon starting. So game week 2, Taylor, for example, comes in for Gordon, but you are very restricted to a starting 11 and not very much else on the bench. I would really look at Son to Dele Alli, for example. Now that would free you up a whole million. You could either use that to do Gordon to St. Maximin, which would be a great transfer, or Armstrong, either of those two, or you could use it to upgrade Dallas to a 4.5 defender to strengthen your bench that way. So I would be looking at Son to Ali and to try and upgrade elsewhere, just to get that strength and depth that you are lacking a little bit at the moment. If it was me, I would go Son to Ali, Ramsdale to maybe Matt Ryan, then Dallas to a Vinagre, and then Gordon up to a St. Maximin. Or if even it's just a Gordon up to a Souček, for example, having him in as well, if he's going to be on your bench, is still much better than having Gordon in your lineup. So try and free up $1 million or $1.5 million just to strengthen that bench a little bit there. So just on a question that we've got in the chat, trying to just keep it very sort of restricted to what we've got in the teams, but we'll flick through to another one that we've got here. If money was no issue, would I go Son over Dele Alli? That's an interesting one. I think I potentially might, because of just the percentage ownership of him. And I think Son is a much hotter sort of ownership. He's a much hotter sort of prospect of it, and I think what people know he can do is much higher, and so you can rely on Son a bit more. But I don't think that I'm going to be going with him. At the start of the season, we have that 100 million to spend. It's very tight. So these are the decisions that you need to make. It's that we don't have the luxury of having that Son over Ali, that thing like that. Because we don't know who those sort of really cheap assets who are going to be starting every week for us. We don't know who they are yet. We're kind of playing a guessing game. So potentially, if I had 110 million, I might do so, but I would then go with Kane. So if money was no object, I'd make Ali to the Kane move. I wouldn't be going with Son in that respect. So if we have a look at this team, so again we've got a Manchester United asset sitting in Fernandes, who's going to be benched game week 1. It's worth looking at here that there is very little that's going to fill in for him. We will be having Anguissa sort of starting in this team if we don't get anyone else in there at the moment. So it isn't quite as much strength and depth for game week 1, but going forward it will look really nice. Keep an eye out again on Souček here, whether he's going to be back ready to play. This benching of Man U assets in game week 1 is a very interesting one. I'm personally going with Greenwood because I think it's only 7.5 million, and I really like him at this price. I don't think you should be thinking Bruno's too much to be sitting on my bench game week 1. I don't think you should be thinking I don't want to put a lot of money on my bench, so I'm just going to go with Greenwood. It's only for 1 week, and after that they have really nice fixtures. Pick the Man U asset that you want, put him in your team, and find a way to have him on your bench. So put that 4.5 defender on the starting team. Put that Crystal Palace Mitchell or someone like that in the starting team for that 1 week, just so you know you've got that Man U asset that you want. It is only for a week. Man City assets, they play Wolves game week 2, so I will be holding off to game week 3 because that Arsenal fixture at home to West Ham in game week 2. West Ham have looked really poor in pre-season, so I think there will be people who make the Aubameyang to De Bruyne move come the game week after the game week 1 deadline, but I think it really is worth holding on to Aubameyang for that game week 2 fixture. Something that's really interesting and on the Aubameyang Salah debate and who to go with captaincy is their goal involvement percentage. So this is something that I've started looking at a fair bit recently. whether Aubameyang or Salah should be my captain. Aubameyang is, when on the pitch, is involved in 51% of all of Arsenal's goals, whereas Salah is down at 38%, I think it is. So in theory, Liverpool need to score 3 goals against Leeds for Salah to get a goal or an assist, whereas Arsenal need to score 2 against Fulham for him to get a goal or an assist. So this is what essentially that means. With Leeds being a better defence than Fulham, I definitely think that it is a tough one to call with Liverpool being at home and Aubameyang being away. There are definitely talking points about both of them. I am currently on the captain Aubameyang side of it, just because of Fulham and how high Aubameyang's goal involvement is, whereas we can get goals from a lot of that Liverpool side, that front three especially, but I just feel like Aubameyang is always involved for them. Just a couple more, guys. I don't want to roll this on because we do end up having a lot more of those similar teams all around. So let me just pick maybe 2 more and we'll go through them. Let me just refresh it because I know a couple of you guys have replied with your team. Do they come up at the bottom, I think? So one more in here that's just been sent in. A key thing that stands out for me here is Harvey Barnes in there at 7 million. I personally think it's a really interesting pick, and I think Leicester are being not looked at enough, and they should be being looked at more. But I prefer Maddison at that price. Barnes, we don't know. We know that he's probably not going to start every single game, depending on what system they go with. Maddison on set pieces, I just really like him at that price. At 7 million, he's being really underlooked. I think looking at Leicester assets is a good idea. Their fixtures are really nice, but I would prefer Maddison over Barnes if I had to pick between the two of them. Again, the players are similar. I don't think Son's worth the money, and Eric Dyer in defence. We can talk about the Spurs defence all day, but I'm just not sure that it's worth a 5 million on someone like Eric Dyer. There are a lot of people with Timo Werner in your team. One thing that I would say is that if Pulisic is back fit, he is the number one to own Chelsea asset. So I would definitely be looking at Pulisic if he's going to be back fit, but I think it's unlikely. I think Havertz will probably be priced at 9 million, if not 8.5, but I'm probably expecting 9. I like Havertz a lot, and if he's at 8.5, he'll be my game week 1 player for Chelsea if we know he's going to be fit enough and ready to play. He has played in the Germany games, things like that, so I do like him a lot as a pick. 8.5, 9 will be a great price for him. Everyone is starting with Werner because he's about the only one that we know will start game week 1. But on price and him being 9.5, he's the least appealing out of the sort of Havertz, Pulisic, Werner group. No, Havertz wasn't announced at 8.5. It hasn't been announced yet, unless it's been announced since this stream has started. It was fake news yet. He hasn't been announced yet. So Werner's in a lot of teams and is in this one here as well, but I would definitely be keeping an eye on Pulisic when he's coming back. We'll go with this as the last team. Thank you all for sort of coming in and listening to this. Trying to keep it slightly shorter than some of my other streams. There are a few talking points in here, which is why I choose it to start with. If we start with the sort of attack, Antonio, he's picked up an injury, so I'd look elsewhere. There are other better 6 million forwards that we know are going to play and have better fixtures than Newcastle, sort of short term and medium term anyway, than Antonio. And Haller started today, which saw Antonio push slightly wide, which is not what us managers want. The other two that we've got is Egan in defence and James in defence as well. If you do want that Sheffield United cover, Egan, McCarthy to Ramsdale, Walker-Peters has more of an attacking threat than what you've got at the moment. It costs exactly the same, so I'd be going with I'd go with Ramsdale and Walker-Peters over McCarthy and Egan if you want that Sheffield United defence. The other one is Reece James. I definitely think that he can be a real option for us this season at that right back spot for Chelsea. He gets really far forward, and Ziyech on that right hand side doesn't. Um, he gets really far forward, but he doesn't go sort of down the wing, and that will be James's job to go sort of cutting all the way down the wing and crossing it in and getting to the byline. That'll be Reece James's job, not that of Ziyech. So I really like Reece James at 5 million. I just want to make sure that he is that starter, because I'd be very surprised if Azpilicueta plays no games for us next season. I'd be very surprised as that. And he's probably going to come in at right back, if not centre back, because we've signed Chilwell. Chelsea have signed Chilwell. So I definitely think it's just a wait and see. It's worth the risk, I think, to go with him. Worth going with. Just keep an eye out where Azpilicueta is going to come in and how often he's going to do so. Now Egan is 5 million. It's some of the more expensive wing backs like Baldock and Stevens who are 5.5. So that's all I wanted to go through. There are a lot of teams, and I'll try and apply to anyone who hasn't already. If you have got this far and aren't, so if you guys haven't if you haven't followed already, please go and do so over on Twitter. But more importantly, if you are watching here, could you subscribe? Really appreciate that. Hit the like button as well to try and get on some of those pages. As well as sort of dropping a comment down below on anything you've agreed with or disagreed with, the sort of Son Ali debate, your captain for game week 1. Make sure to put it in the comments below. That is my page on the middle, and I will put up the mini league for you one more time just before we end the stream. But that is there. If there's any of you guys who want your team rated, I will go and put them on Twitter, and I would go and reply to you over there. I'm really happy to answer all your questions if it's not included in this video. But thanks a lot for sending in all your teams. I'll do my best to get back to all of you. But have a really nice weekend. 1 week to go until the Premier League is back. I cannot wait. And I'll be live again on Tuesday with a host in the hot seat to answer all your final questions, guys. But that is all for me this evening. Have a nice rest of your evenings, and I'll see you next week. Cheers, guys. Goodbye.